Hello, my name is Roisin and welcome or welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reading 4 books that I requested on Netgalley. So we're going to be very focused on my Kindle in this vlog. Netgalley is an online platform for reviewers where publishers will post e-arcs of their books, advanced reader copies, and you can request them, and then if you get approved, you can then read them. And I used to do it, and then I never read anything before it came out, and now I kind of got back into it and over requested again the amount of books, and so now I am in need of reading them. So the 4 books I'm going to read in September all come out in September, so I might not be bang on time. They probably will come out by the time this video goes live, but I did read them all at least in the month they came out, which is better than my historical average. So the books I'm going to read is one I'm really excited for, The Fraud, which is the new Zadie Smith. As you may know, I love Zadie Smith. I have a video on my channel reviewing on beauty, and this is her first historical fiction set in the Victorian period, and I don't know much more about it than that. I think we follow like different time periods, partly in Jamaica, partly in the UK, following a woman whose brother, cousin, something, is a writer. So I think it's partially about the literary scene in the Victorian period, and there's also a trial going on, I believe. I'll find out more as I read it. Then I'm also going to read Shame by Ernaux, which is a memoir of a time in Annie Ernaux's childhood where her father tried to kill her mother, and I have heard a lot about Annie Ernaux as a writer, but I've never read any of her works before, so I'm going to give this one a go. I think that's quite short. Then I'm also planning to read The Glutton by A.K. Blakemore. A.K. Blakemore wrote The Manning Tree Witches, which I have here, and I really loved. This one was about witch hunts in the UK, in Essex specifically, in the 17th century, and I think this one is set in France in the 18th century, about a man who can eat anything and just like keeps eating stuff. I think it is based on like an urban legend from that time period. I think it's going to explore like the upheaval in France during the revolution from the perspective of this man. And then the final one that I'm planning to read is Stay True by Hua Hsu, which is a memoir, and again I know very little about it. I just enjoyed the cover of this one, and I thought I would give it a go. Another memoir, and I don't have a great history with memoir, so perhaps I shouldn't have requested this one, but we will see how it goes. I'm sorry if the lighting's changed. I just just turned on my Mac and now I'm being glowy. But those are the 4 books I'm planning to read over the next few days, so I will let you know what I think as we go through them. Hello, so I have got some post here from W.W. Norton and Company, and I'm not sure what it is, and it feels huge, so I'm gonna open it. I don't know if in something I requested and I've forgotten about, and like they didn't respond to the email, so I didn't know it was coming, and it just has. I thought maybe it was Peach Pit, but I think that's coming from Blackwell's, so I don't think it's that, because I bought that one. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here, but I thought I would open it with you. Oh God, I hate it when I do that. It is huge. It's Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey. I did request it and they didn't tell me they were sending it, so I was right. If you've been here before, you'll know I have a classics degree, and I have an essay on this channel about Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey. Have I been saying Odyssey? This is her translation of the Iliad. So yeah, maybe I'll actually finally finish the Iliad, because I've only read it like in parts throughout my degree rather than cover to cover. Yeah, so I did request this one, but they didn't tell me they were going to send it. So that's exciting. It is so hot today, so hot. After a summer of complaining about the rain, obviously now I am desperate for it back, because it is like 32 degrees and like 90% humidity, and there is no way to cool down my house. There is no way. We have people coming over for like early dinner, late lunch kind of thing today, so we spent all morning cleaning, tidying, cooking, and I'm just, as you can probably see, really sweaty. But I've started The Fraud by Zadie Smith. I started it a few days ago, but I'm still only like 10% in. Not because I'm not enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the narrative voice in particular. I love that kind of wry, arch, humorous voice that she has in a lot of her books, this time tied with that kind of, because that is quite a Victorian sensibility. So it works really well in this, because it's the historical fiction set in the early Victorian period at the moment anyway. So yes, I am enjoying it so far, but I haven't got very far despite starting it a few days ago because I haven't really like sat down to read for a long time. And so now that we are all ready to go, except that I'm currently making chada, so when that's finished boiling then I will be finished, done, leave that to cool. But yeah, so I'm gonna sit and actually pay attention and read this book, and I'm hoping there will be a thunderstorm soon and this weather will break, because if it doesn't, I will. I am halfway through The Fraud by Zadie Smith now. It's a very long one, well, not a very long one, but definitely a longer book than the others on this in this reading vlog, but I am enjoying it. As you probably know, I love Zadie Smith. This is my 4th book that I'm reading by her and 3rd novel, and it's her first historical fiction novel, which, you know, is a genre of which I am fond. It might be a bit too loud out here to be filming. So far I'm enjoying the narrative voice. It definitely has Zadie Smith's like witty, wry tone that I've noticed from other novels of hers, and also is common among Victorian novels, which this is kind of an homage to in certain ways, and also a pastiche of in certain ways. It definitely has a lot of humour to it, and we cannot really take the narrative voice too seriously. You have to take everything with a slight sardonic eye, particularly as our central character, so far anyway, Eliza, she sees the world that way too. She has this kind of wry, bitter sense of humour. We flash back and forth between her youth in the 1830s and her middle age in the 1870s, and we see the way that she has become more embittered as time goes on. It's a lot sexier a book than I was expecting. I was not expecting it at all, but our main character Eliza has a relationship with 2 people, and one is more romantic, the other kind of a BDSM situation going on, but I am enjoying reading it. It is again done with a lot of humour, and in rather kind of a silly way, but I think it works. I think she manages to balance it well. It's a book about like identity. The title is The Fraud, and there is a court case, which I believe is a real life court case, of a man who is claiming to be the heir to this kind of gentry family, but is also accused of being a butcher from a working class family. And we are going to that trial, and the family that we are focused on discuss that trial at home as well. So in the 1870s, that is kind of a central part of it, and there is like talk of George Eliot in it as well, you know, having a pseudonym, not being who you appear to be, and the reasons for hiding who you are. She mentions one of the characters being hard to understand because she doesn't wear a mask, and so the idea of wearing masks and portraying yourself in a certain way is a big part of it. Dickens is also mentioned in this, and I think that Smith is using a lot of the kind of those humorous characters that are a stock type of Dickens, but she also talks about the cruelty of that, and the way that they came from life, and it is interesting to see the way that she is using that humour as well to talk about her characters, but critiquing it at the same time. And so yeah, I'm enjoying it. I do enjoy Smith in general, but as I said, it's a long one, so we'll see how I enjoy it further on as we get further in. So I was editing this video and I realised I never wrapped up The Fraud by Zadie Smith, and I now have a cold, so please excuse me if I sound crinkly in my throat. It's not great, but I finished The Fraud, and unfortunately, I kind of fell out of love with it over the course of reading it, which was a bit of a disappointment. I found it kind of a slog to get through, which is not really what you want. I think it struggled a bit from not knowing what it wanted to be, or at least it felt to me like it didn't know what it wanted to be. Like, there were thematic linkages of fraud and identity and freedom that travelled throughout the 3 different perspectives, the 3 different like story threads. So our main story thread, it feels like to me, Eliza, who is the cousin of this writer, who is in the 1830s. He's like a very popular, well-known writer, and she's meeting a lot of famous writers with him, like Dickens and William Makepeace Thackeray, and in that literary scene. And then in the 1870s, we see him much more down on his luck and how that's affected his cousin and like her relationship with his family. We had that piece, and then we had the trial, claiming to be the heir of this very well-off aristocratic family, but was being accused of being a working class butcher from Essex, being a fraud, like trying to get the inheritance through fraud. And our main character goes to this trial. And at the trial, she sees his manservant, I guess, who is one of the people who is, before he went missing and then he came back, and is saying that it's definitely the same man. And he is a black man who had been enslaved in Jamaica. And so we also flash back to his childhood, his growing up, and his experience of slavery, the slave trade, the rebellions in Jamaica, and of travelling into Britain, particularly his life story, and also his son. And I think the Eliza story, which had themes of class and queerness and writing and identity and freedom and gender and all of these things, was very interesting, and Eliza herself was a really great character. So was her cousin and her cousin's new wife. I thought they were all like the funny, interesting, flawed characters that Smith does so well. But it did get drawn out a little long. And then the manservant, whose name I can't remember, his story of his growing up in Jamaica was also really interesting and could have made a whole book on its own. Felt a little like shoehorned in here, but it was very interesting. But it only took up like 70 pages, and yeah, it felt like a wee novella smushed into this novel for the reasons of showing different like concepts of freedom at this time period in the UK, and more broadly ideas of colonialism and the aftermath of the slave trade, like the aftermath of supposed freedom, but what actually it means to be free, etc, etc. So thematically it was linked, but narratively it felt a little shoehorned in. And the reason it felt shoehorned in, I think, is because the connection of this trial was not done particularly well, and that bit was the bit that really, I think, let this whole book down and made it feel like a drag. It is a real life trial that happened in the 1870s in London, and Zadie Smith had obviously done a lot of research, and I think she's not normally a historical fiction writer, and I think she's fallen down on one of the things that historical fiction writers often struggle with. It can often be a thing that someone has done so much research, they want to put it all in the book. But because it's not like our personal Wikipedia wormhole, like it is your wormhole, I know she's not just used Wikipedia, but like that is your narrative wormhole, that is your personal interest, and to make it interesting to the reader, you can't just put everything in, like we lose interest. And I think the trial, it didn't have any tension, it didn't have any humour either. Like I think it was trying to be funny and trying to be like intriguing, the question of identity and who this man is, but it fell a bit flat, and it felt a bit like reading a textbook, and I didn't think really added anything to the narrative. It was just a way to connect Eliza with the manservant, to like get them to interact, and so why did it take up a third of the book? Like it didn't need to. So yeah, I didn't love it. Unfortunately, I still think Smith's a great writer. I still will read everything else that she's written, and continues to write, but for me this one, it didn't hold up. It didn't hold up as much as I wanted it to. It is the hottest day of the year in a week of hottest days of the year. It is boiling for September, and it is so hot in my house I can't like concentrate. So I've decided to go into my garden at midday. They're very sensible, but yeah, our gardens, we haven't done anything with our garden this year because of like work commitments and stuff, so it is very overgrown, incredibly overgrown. I'm not going to do any work in it today, even despite being accidentally dressed like a farmer. What I am going to try and do is put up a like tent outside, a makeshift tent, not a real tent, with like blankets and things, and maybe get the paddling pool out and stick my feet in it. Try and have like, just spend some time outside, because it is a really nice day and I haven't spent any time outside all week really, despite the lovely weather. So yeah, I'm gonna go do that. I'm gonna set that up, so if next time you see me I am red as a beetroot and even more dishevelled, that would be why. Hello! So I have made it. I have a tent in the garden now, lots of cushions. I don't know if you can see. There we go. It's so warm, but I have a nice drink. I'm just a bit worried. There are a lot of spiders in this garden and also crickets. I don't want to be inundated with bugs. But anyway, I am going to read one of my Netgalley arcs in here. I'm going to read Shame by Annie Ernaux. I haven't read any Annie Ernaux before, but I know she is very well known and kind of, she's won the Nobel Prize, I think, but is also like kind of a contentious figure. I think some people love her, some people really don't. I'm not sure. I feel like I'm lacking in knowledge about this. But this is non-fiction, this is a memoir about the day that her father tried to kill her mother, and the effect that had on her life. And it is only 80 or so pages long, so I'm going to try and read it all in here. The tent is coming closer and closer to my head. Need to get something to like hold it out sideways a bit more, because it is quite a breezy day. But yeah, that's what I'm going to read now. I'll talk to you about it when I have finished it. I've finished Shame by Annie Ernaux. It was first published in French in 1996 and then translated into English in 1998. So this is a re-release, a reissue, something like that, by Fitzcarraldo, that I was reading on Netgalley, obviously. And it was, I think, good to read today. It is set in June and July when she was 12 years old, although she ruminates on her childhood in general and her life growing up in this small town in Normandy between Rouen and Le Havre, where she and it begins with this experience of her father trying to kill her mother, although it is told in very abstract terms. It's very much a book about memory and shame. And I think that Annie Ernaux is, from this one book that I've read of her, I've enjoyed her writing and her turn of phrase, the way that she can bring to life a moment, a tableau of an experience of her travelling to Lourdes with her father, and of her Catholic school where she went. I think there's these really evocative moments and sort of ruminating on her experience, but I found that it was not a particularly interesting read. I think that she mentions the way that she finds herself wanting to analyse. She talks a lot about writing and being a writer, how this formative event made her become a writer. After evoking the images I have of that summer, which is the images that I've said feel very real, and it was good to read on such a hot, sticky summer day here. After evoking the images I have of that summer, I feel inclined to write, then I discovered that, or then I realised that, words implying a clear perception of the events one has lived through. But in my case there is no understanding, only this feeling of shame that has fossilised the images and stripped them of meaning. The fact that I experience such inertia and nothingness is something that cannot be denied. It is the ultimate truth. And that sense of inertia and nothingness, I think, really pervades this book. So it is successful in what she was trying to do, but even for such a short book, it often feels pointless. Why am I being told all of the strictures and the rules of the world you live in, except that it reiterates this idea of shame. There is shame because of her class status and shame because of Catholicism, and it's really good at shame. So she talks about her going to a private school despite being from this working class family, and her experience of shame when her school friends see her parents, her experiences of shame of living in this shop, living above a shop and having no sense of privacy, her bodily ablutions being perceived by the people of the town, and also her feeling of shame in regards to her body and regards to the way she is taught at school, and the pervasiveness of Catholicism through her school, despite feeling it not feeling pervasive and it not feeling shame-filled, but it always being there in the background. I'm sorry if you can hear what sounds like a child being murdered. Not sure what's going on there. Look, I think I will try another Ernaux, so if you have any recommendations, do let me know in the comments down below. So it's just gone 6 AM on my morning off, and it's feeling quite chilly, which is good. Autumn might be actually finally arriving. Our sunrise is looking, it's alright, it's alright. I'm gonna go on a bike ride now. Yeah, I might wait for it to get a little bit lighter because I don't have any lights on my bike at the moment. It's nearly 10 o'clock now, and so I'm going to go out for some breakfast to a local bakery. I used to love going to this bakery when I worked in the library because it was nearby. Now I no longer work in this town. It's really, I've not been in ages, so I'm going to go, and they've got a new premises and everything. So I'm going to go there for breakfast. So that means back on my bike, out into town. Hello, so I am halfway through the Glutton by A.K. Blakemore now, and I am enjoying it. It is, to begin with, it started really slowly and it took a while for me to get into, but now that we are kind of on the road, I am much more enjoying it. What I remember from The Manning Tree Witches by A.K. Blakemore, and also the fact that she's a poet, she's very into language and the way that the thing sounds. There's a lot of like repetition of sentences in the same way you would do in a prose poem, and like internal rhyme inside prose, which is quite an interesting way of doing things. I think sometimes she gets a little carried away, and is more focused on the sound of the words than the sense of them, which I can enjoy, but I think it's going a little too far in some cases, particularly at the start, which was, as I said, very slow moving. But now that there are more characters, now that we are having a lot of fun, so our boy Tara, who was from this small town, and his father died when he was born. His mother became at the town a sex worker, and then he grew up, and we're basically through the slow part of his life when his stepdad was smuggling salt, and it's quite an interesting look at France of the time period and the famines that were going on due to bad harvests, and the like extreme inequality in France under Louis XVI, and so it is an interesting kind of tangential look at that through the eyes of the peasants. But we have now got into like a kind of swashbuckling adventure part of it, quite dark still. This whole book is very like gory, very visceral, in the same way The Manning Tree Witches was, dealing with poverty and the underbelly of the world. But yeah, as I said, now it's picked up and it's got some fun in it. I'm definitely enjoying it a lot more. It is a pleasure to read now. Now the writing just feels like sumptuous and fun, whereas before it felt like, okay, come on, I want to get going, I want to get somewhere with this, because it just felt like it was indulgent. Whereas now, as I said, I'm enjoying it. It's much more fun. So I'm looking forward to reading the rest of it and seeing how it goes. It is also told in 2 time periods. So we have Tara when he is dying at the end, later on, and talking to a nun, telling her the story of his life, and then we are experiencing that story of his life. And I've often said I don't like 2 time periods, particularly in historical fiction, but I don't mind it when we know exactly what's going on. I don't like it when it's like for some sort of twist reveal, because I think it's always particularly pretty predictable, and always one time period is more interesting than the other when they're just for like thematic linkage, rather than for anything else. But this one is, we are seeing the end of his life and then we're flashing back through his life, and I don't mind that. That's a fine conceit for me. It's things like Great Circle, or things like, well, there are various other ones that I can't remember right now, where it is like a twist that somehow, but you always know someone is going to be related somehow from the later time period to the earlier time period, so it's never a particularly compelling twist. No one's ever surprised by it. Anyway, that's an entirely different thing, but yeah, I am enjoying the Glutton. Yeah, I'm definitely always looking for some sort of like fun, interestingly written historical fiction, because a lot of the historical fiction I've been reading this year just not been vibing with. Hello. It might seem really dark, I'm not sure. It's not actually late, it's just really stormy out there today. I cycled into work and I nearly got knocked off my bike by the wind. So I ended up not cycling home for that reason. Anyway, I have finished The Glutton by 8K Blakemore, and I did enjoy it. I didn't love it, but I did enjoy it. I thought it was fun, and disgusting, like a disgusting sort of fun. It kind of made me think of, like, it was what I wished Perfume by Patrick Süskind had been, because it's in that kind of gross, grim darkness. It's set during the French Revolution, and it is... There's a moment when all the generals are there, so like Bonaparte's there and Dumas is there, which is quite fun. And it is really revelling in disgust and the like brutal humanity of it. But it is also giving our main character a humanity of his own and like sympathetic to him despite the like weirdness of him. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. And I'm glad I read it. I didn't love it though. Like I said, it was a little overindulgent and over the top in terms of the language. I did enjoy it at times, and that sort of decadence I think worked for the subject matter, because we are set during a time when like decadence is the issue in terms of the Sun Court and the royals and all that, and like Marie Antoinette and the decadence of that. But the decadence is for like grimness, disgust, and the peasantry. Like it's decadent in a disgusting way. But I did feel like it went over the top sometimes, and was just language for the sake of language, which is all right in moderation, but this was definitely not in moderation. So yeah, it was a good fun romp to read, and an interesting, yeah, I like the way it talked about poverty and the way that it humanised our main character. I did feel like it was a little disjointed. Like there are two time periods. One's with the nun who's watching over him as he tells her his story, and one's in the past as he grows up and as he progresses to being this bottomless man. But like the storyline in the future gets cut off and changed at one point, and there are two kind of different points of Turat's life where he is with the roaming band of ne'er-do-wells and when he's in the army, and they don't feel very well integrated or connected, and so it is a little jarring. And also the pacing, as I said, was a little strange as well. I didn't love it, but it was fun, and I think I could forgive it those sort of technical flaws because it was just so much fun to read. I have just had a massage, so that is why my hair looks super greasy. It is oil from the massage, but I'm halfway through Stay True now, and I am enjoying it. It is the story of, it is a memoir, and I don't normally love memoir. I need to stop picking up memoirs basically, unless someone I really trust on this genre specifically recommends it, because people who love memoirs, they just recommend stuff all the time, and I get intrigued and then I don't like memoir. But anyway, I am enjoying it to some extent. We started with his childhood growing up in California, and he's feeling like an outsider, and it does relate to his Asian American heritage and his feeling of disconnect from the world around him, and also from his father who went back to work in Taiwan and only kind of communicated through fax. And then we go into his university years, and that's where we are now. He's obsessed with music and is a very like self-consciously trying to construct his own identity, and he interweaves his narrative with kind of philosophy and Heidegger and Derrida, talking about identity, talking about friendship, talking about relationships, and also his political awakening with the Black Panthers who are still on the campus in the 90s when he is going to Berkeley. And I am enjoying his discussions of his relationships, particularly with his friend Ken, and his becoming a mentor for younger Asian American youths, and his understanding of the subtle differentiations in Asian American Californian identity, what it means to be Japanese American and have been in the States for 4 generations, versus being Chinese American as he is, but from a middle class family who were engineers and master's degrees before they came to America, versus being from the Mien people from Laos who were left as refugees, and the different experience that is growing up in the same place and being seen as a monolith. And all of that discussion is really interesting. It's also a discussion about like sort of his own pretentiousness and his own focus on media as a marker of being a good person, good, interesting, cool person, like your taste in music and films and books and things, but specifically music. And it's very of its time in terms of the 90s, the discussion of like Pearl Jam and Oasis and Nirvana. It's very of its time in that sense, but it does have a kind of relevance, and I'm finding it, the way that it's written with this kind of humour and this kind of tender, this sort of tender mocking towards his younger self, his sort of understanding of the pretentiousness and the kind of ridiculousness of his judgmental person, but not a judgmental feeling towards that, a very kind, tender feeling towards that. It's very relatable, all of this, the kind of feeling of growing up and of going away to a campus and meeting people there and living on your own for the first time and struggling with ideas of identity and what is intrinsic and what is constructed, and if anything even is intrinsic to the self. All those philosophical discussions, I'm enjoying them. He does love a list. He loves to list like little vignettes of ideas in relationship to something, or he's talking to someone and they are listing all the TV shows they can remember, and then he lists all the TV shows they can remember, and I think that that can go a little far. It feels a little self-indulgent in parts, and also just a little empty in other parts. Like, I'm enjoying the way that he's thinking about identity construction, but some of it just does feel a little vapid in terms of when he's talking about media consumption, more so. And yeah, so it can get a little repetitive, a little self-indulgent, but so far I am actually enjoying it for a memoir. It's also very short, which I think does make for a better memoir for me. I think I like the short ones better. I would say there seems to be something wrong with the formats, the Netgalley formats, because there are bits that like don't make sense next to each other and seem to be like the middle of a sentence after the end of a sentence, in a way that's making me feel like there is something messed up with the format and things that like just don't follow on from one another. I must have missed something, and it's been misplaced, and I don't think, I'm assuming that that is something wrong with the Netgalley Kindle, like the way that it's interacted with one another, rather than anything that is in the book. I don't think it is an issue of the book's formatting. But yeah, interesting for me to be kind of enjoying a memoir. But it's only about 3.5 hours long. So in terms of what my Kindle says with my reading speed and that. Really gone for a monochrome look with this shot. And my jumper, hang on, and match my living room. Okay, we're gonna scoot over because it wants to turn around. I'm too low, but I can't make it any lower. I'm gonna make myself higher. I have finished Stay True, and so I have finished all of the Netgalley arcs that I was reading in this vlog. So I was halfway through and I was like, oh, it's kind of self-indulgent and kind of relatable, and I'm enjoying it, but it's not particularly deep. And then the middle hits and you discover what the memoir is actually about, and it is about all the things I mentioned before, about forming your identity and coming of age and being Asian American and friendship and reciprocal gift exchange and philosophy and politics. It is about all of those things, but it is about grief. It is a memoir about grief, and it's I still had the same issues with it, with the listing. There was a lot of listing of things that felt like you could have cut several of the items from this list, although they were in relation to the friendship that was being discussed as a thing they enjoyed doing, but it just felt like it didn't really work necessarily for a reader who is not involved in your inside joke. But it hit me, really hit me. I was crying, and I've said it before, I don't cry often at books. I think it's the second book this year that's made me cry, the second book out of 85, the second out of 85, so clearly I don't cry that often at books. But this one did hit me. It might also be, you know, the time of the month that I was reading it in, but it definitely hit me emotionally, made me feel the power of grief, which, as someone who has never experienced grief, like not seriously, I've never lost anyone I was close to, I think it speaks well. It's not like I had a relating experience to it and therefore it just touched me because of my personal experience. It really I was gonna say gave off that feeling, but that's not what explored and explained that feeling well. I thought the ending was a little bit lackluster. It went off in a direction that I felt like was just there because it was chronological rather than because it really worked thematically. But overall, yeah, I don't normally like memoir and I enjoyed this one, and I do think the fact that it is 100 some pages is part of the reason I think memoir should be short, because the other memoir that I absolutely love, is Heavy by Kaise Lehman, which I liked much more than this one. But it's one of my favourite books of all time, so like that's not a slight on this book. Yeah, that one is also short. So I think for me, memoirs should be short and lyrical. Those are the things I need. Otherwise, I'm not going to really enjoy them. But anyway, I did enjoy this one, and I did enjoy most of the books. Trying to remember. No, I didn't enjoy all of the books. But I have enjoyed reading some of the Netgalley arcs. I'm trying to be better, as I said, at reading them before they've come out. I haven't done that this month, but at least I'm reading them near when they came out. I'm thinking of trying to do that next year as well, to focus more on some of the new releases that I'm interested in, rather than just telling you about them and then forgetting about them myself, because I'm reading my TBR. I don't know. I'm not making plans for next year. I am feeling chaotic, as you can probably tell by this outro, so I'm not sure what's going on, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Please remember to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, to subscribe. I put out new videos twice a week most of the time, and I will see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye.